Okay. Let's talk stage directions, just in case somebody doesn't know them. I am standing at center center. Okay. I am at the center of the stage, up and left and right. Stage directions, we use the actor's frame of reference. Right, so it's the actor looking at the audience. So that is referred to as stage left. That over there is referred to as stage right. If I am walking towards the audience, I am going down the stage. If I am going away from the audience, I am going up the stage. Does anybody know why we use those terms? Because we used to, we don't really do this much anymore, but in the, well, in the opera period, so 800, 900 to 1600, instead of making the audience raise up, audience used to be on level ground. So we raised up the stage so the audience could see the people at the back of the stage. So the stage was raked, is the term that they use. And you literally walked down the stage to go towards the audience, right? Because it was on a slope. So that's why we call it downstage, upstage. So downstage, upstage, stage left, stage right. All right, now we've already used up and down, so we can't use up and down anymore. So now our flying scenery goes out and in. All right, so we've already used in, out, up, and down. So we can't call going that way going out stage or going in stage. So we now then call that going off stage. Right, so specifically, I'm walking off stage right. Right, or if I have something over here, it wants to go on stage left to center stage, or to downstage center, upstage center, etc., etc., etc. All right, now there are some imaginary lines in the theater. There are two imaginary lines. There is the center line, and there is the plaster line. So the plaster line is the imaginary line that would go from right here, the back of the proscenium arch, to the other side. Okay, the other side line is the center line. How do we find our center line? What do we think? What is it the center of? Oh, it is. It is not the center of the stage, because stages are not always symmetrical. Oftentimes they are not. Typically one wing, for instance, this theater, right? One wing is a lot wider than another wing. So the wing is the area that is outside of the proscenium arch, but still inside of the theater. Right, so if we were to do the center of our stage, it'd probably be right here. All right, so we took that wall and found the center. It's probably right here. Right, so the center line is the center of the viewing window. Right, so the center of the proscenium arch. And you find the center of it, and it is perpendicular to the plaster line. All right, up, down, in, out, left, right, on, off. Okay, let's talk about some soft goods. These are called soft goods. Call them soft goods because they do not have a structure. All right, so any fabric is a soft good because it's not rigid. All right, some facts about soft goods. So in the theater, since the 1980s, we have to use fire retardant fabrics. What does it mean for something to be fire retardant? Incorrect. Try again. What does it mean for something to be fire retardant?
Is it more resistant to fire?
Not necessarily. Kind of. What does to retard mean?
That's to like go back and like rewind or something.
Say it again.
It's like to go back or to like, it's like to retard to slow.
To slow.
I'm trying to think of the music.
Yes, so in the music term, right, to retard or retard is slow, right? So so thinking about what the word retard means, what would fire retardant mean? Right, it slows down the spread of the fire. Now, most drapes are self-extinguishing, meaning that if that curtain catches fire, it will put itself out and hopefully won't spread the fire to this thing. But really all the term means is that it doesn't spread fire, right? It's designed to suppress the fire. It will still catch fire. It is not fireproof. It is fire retardant. Now, in order to do that, because it is a fiber, right? So it's a natural fiber. It's made out of cloth. What they do is they soak it in a salt bath, right? Because salt is naturally fire retardant. Now, this is cool because that allows us to make really big drapes that are fire retardant. But the problem is it only works when it has the salts inside of it. So what that means is that typically drapes are only rated for around 10 to 15 years. So after a certain amount of time, they lose their retardancy. Also, does anybody? Oh, this is always weird. Whatever. If you get it wet, right, and it happens to your shirts when you're working out, your clothing, your hats, your armpit stains, right? The coloring goes away from it, and you will get a white ring around it. And you'll get a nice white ring if you've had a good heavy sweat. That's the sweats from your body, and the water pushes them to a dry spot, and then they all collect at where the dry line is. Same thing happens with a drape, right? If you spill water on it, coffee, soda, whatever, all of the salt where it was wet gets pushed out from where it was wet and collects where it was dry, which means that you'll have a salt ring that looks like this. And not only do you have a big, ugly white circle on your curtain now, the part in the middle is no longer fire retardant because it doesn't have those salts in it. The same thing will also happen if you ever leave curtains in an unair conditioned space, especially somewhere where humidity levels fluctuate a lot, like Alabama, right? The salt, it'll get moist and the whole thing will get slightly saturated and the salts will all fall to the bottom. Which is why if you ever go into like old crappy high schools, you'll see that there's a color change and like the top of the curtain is kind of brownish and the bottom of the curtain is whiter. It's more of a gray. That's the salts slowly falling down the curtain as it gets humid and dries and humids and dries. So that being said, this curtain is, let's see, this is a full stage curtain, right? So this is on a traveler and it'll close all the way in the middle. If I remember correctly, I think one half of a curtain is about $5,000. Right? That's how expensive these things are. That's just that half. That's not including that half. All right, so just to give you a frame of reference of how expensive they are and how nice we want to treat them. I actually don't think we have any good examples in this theater. So when we have a drape, now this stuff is 32-ounce velour, right? So it's got, how do I want to do this? Hold on a second. Trying to figure out how to safely, in the COVID world, have you guys pet the curtain. Well, that seems a bad idea. No, I don't know what's going on. All right, everybody find a piece of curtain. Spread yourselves out a little bit. Find a piece of curtain. And touch it. Give it a little bit of love. Pet it like it's a little doggy. Feel the hairs and the fibers on it. So this is a velour, right? So it's got a nap to it. It's got little hairs on the front of it. Now velours, right? If you're a kid and you've got a carpet or a nice velour chair, you would draw your finger on it and make patterns by going the opposite direction, right? You brush the hair up and it becomes a darker color of black, and you push the hair down and it becomes a lighter color of black. That is the nap or the fibers on the outside of the curtain and the way that the light reacts and hits it. That nap is important when you are dealing with velour. You always want to make sure the nap is pointing down, right? So that if you were to pet the kitty, you always want to pet animals from the head to the tail, never the opposite, right? So you want to pet from the top down and you want the fibers to go the same way. If I was to take this curtain, the exact same fabric, and turn it upside down and put them next to each other, they would look like two different colors because of the direction of the light. Right, so we always want to make sure that our velour is pointed the same direction for every piece, or else what will happen is you'll have a domino panel. And you'll have like this one is black and this one is gray, and this one is black and this one is gray. Right, so we have to be very careful and intentional when we use these things. All right, so when we have a soft good that only stays on the sides and it does not track in, we call those legs, right? Like your legs. Now this behind us, this we refer to as a border. Got a couple of different names. Some people will refer to it as a border. Some people will call it a teaser. But it is short and long versus tall and narrow. Now, when we add the two together, right, when we have legs and a border, we call them a portal, right? So because it creates a framing window for you. And the way that they used to use these, and we'll probably use it here, is it gives you forced perspective, right? So this one will be a little bit wider. We'll go up stage to the next set. We'll bring it all in a little bit. And it makes the eye look like the stage is deeper than the stage actually is. So we call them portals when we put them together. Legs and borders. All right, let's take a step up stage. How am I doing on battery? I'm okay. So we can see the next thing. I don't know if she can see. So that one right there, that is a scrim. Scrims are kind of fun and magical. Really, they are they're really for lighting. And what you do with them is it's kind of like a two-way mirror, right? So when you light them from the front, they seem like a solid background, and you can't see anything that is behind it. But if you light it from the back, you can see everything behind it. Right, so it's the popular trick to use is they'll bring a scrim in, say mid-stage, and they won't have any lights in front of it, and you can't see that there's a scrim. Right, it becomes invisible, mostly. Right, so you light it in the back, and it looks like nothing is happening, and then what they'll do is they'll slowly bring up lights in front of it, and everything in the background world will fade away, and the scrim will become a solid wall, and then they act in front of it, right? It's a fun reveal, and they can do it in the opposite, right? I've seen it happen sometimes where they'll do stuff in front of it, and you don't notice that there's a scrim, and then the lights shift a little bit, and all of a sudden you can kind of see a figure behind it. All right, and then further behind that, let's see. Actually, the best place to see it is probably over by the door. Is our cyc, which is that gray thing standing up there. Now, there is some debate as to whether or not that is technically a cyc. Everybody will call it a cyc. If we want to get too technical, it's not. So cyc, CYC, is a shortened form of cyclorama, is the full term. A cyclorama was invented in the late 1800s, and it is a circular room. And what they would do is they would paint the room in perspective. And so it was kind of like the first IMAX. You could stand in an area and you could see the entire horizon because there was painting in your peripheral, right? So it wasn't just here, it was surrounding you. So you could see the landscape painted all around you. And so they would go places and they would depict like battlefields and stuff like that. If you go to Gettysburg, there's a really good one that's still in use, and you can see the Battle of Gettysburg. And if you're standing in the right spot, you don't see anybody else and you don't see the ground, you just see the painting. And it feels like you're there, right? You can see it all the way around you, and it's painted so that the building A is curved this way, but like they do on green screens, it's also curved this way, right? So it kind of slopes away from you. And so the things at the back or at the top are smaller than the things at the front. That's technically what a cyclorama is. Right, so cycloramas or cycs are also supposed to be curved because that curvature affects the way that light bounces off of them. That being said, nobody really does that. Right, so as technical as we want to get, nobody really does it that way. And we refer to a cyc as a giant piece of fabric that doesn't have any seams. They are still typically usually a specific type of fabric, a fabric that blends the light better than just reflecting the light. If you do college night, they will call it a cyc. Technically, what they have in Palmer Auditorium is a bounce, because it's just a big white piece of fabric. It doesn't blend the light, it just reflects the light, right? So you shine light at it and the light bounces off of it. This piece of fabric is a little bit more expensive. Just frame of reference, I'm pretty sure that if you got a really good deal on this cyc, it would cost $30,000. So $30,000, I think a good scrim is around $20,000, $5,000, $5,000. This is probably around $6,000 because it's a lot of seams, right? So you can kind of gather little by little like how much all of these things cost, which is why we need to be careful when we're doing things like bringing them in and making sure we don't hit sticks, or which hopefully I didn't rip a hole because I realized I caught a light with that curtain over there. All right, so we have to be careful when we're bringing things in. We want to keep our eyes on them because we don't want to put holes in our very expensive fabrics. Upstage, downstage, soft goods, legs, portals. Am I missing anything? Ooh, maybe that'll be extra credit homework. So extra credit homework, if you guys want to find imagery and write me up a small blurb on how a double purchase system works, I'll make an extra credit assignment on Canvas that you guys can do. More or less, the way that the difference is that they move half as far, right? So instead of having your handrail here at the bottom, you would have your handrail halfway up the theater, and it moves half the distance. Sorry, let me grab my frame of reference. All right, so it is half the distance. It moves twice as far, but you have to put twice as much weight on the arbor. So on this system, for every foot that you move the arbor, the batten moves a foot. On a double purchase system, for every foot you move the arbor, the batten moves 2 feet. But you have to put twice as much weight on the arbor. So in order to have 1,000 pounds on the batten, you have to have 2,000 pounds on your arbor. And they have pros and cons, but you guys can do a little bit of digging and find a picture and explain to me how it works and why maybe you would want that. They're not very popular. They were really big in like the late 80s, and so there's a handful of theaters across the country that were built in the 1985, 1987 time frame that are like, oh wow, hey, it's a double purchase system. They did not last very long. Like they're still there, but it wasn't popular for very long. People thought it would be really cool, and they were like, wow, this is a lot of extra work. Okay, yeah, we don't want to do this anymore. All right. I think that's everything. Is there any questions? Did all the Canvas stuff in the videos working? Okay. So I will not, so Tuesday will be an online class, and then we're going to be online for another 2 weeks or so, because the baby is due Wednesday. So I will be unavailable. Feel free to send me emails. I'm going to be slower to respond to them, but just let me know if something isn't working or something you're having troubles. Email me. I'll answer. I'll fix it. Just know that I'm going to be dealing with a brand new baby, and especially next week I will be in the hospital and dealing with my wife who just gave birth and a brand new baby. So let me know if there's any problems, if you guys have any issues, but we'll be online for a bit until I come back at the beginning of October. I think the rigging test is October 10th, 8th, somewhere around there.
Did we have a knot quiz from last time?
Oh, we were supposed to do that today. All right, well, I'll make you guys make selfies and record selfies to upload. Cool?
Cool.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for reminding me. That means the next